There are cities you visit, and then there are cities you slowly discover. Agadir is one of those places. At first, it seems simple. A peaceful Moroccan city, palm trees, blue skies, cafes, taxis moving through the streets, tourists enjoying the sunshine, and somewhere beyond all of this, the Atlantic Ocean. But Agadir has another story, a story that is not immediately visible when you walk through its modern streets, because the city you are looking at today is a city that had to begin again. Almost everything changed here, and yet, Agadir survived. It rebuilt itself, and today, people come from all over the world to walk these same streets, to sit in its cafes, to enjoy its beaches, and to watch the sun disappear over the Atlantic. So today, we are going to experience Agadir, not from a car, not from a tour bus, but on foot. We are starting in the heart of the city, and we are going to walk slowly toward the ocean, passing through the streets,
سخط العمل,
the everyday life of Agadir, and eventually, the beach, the Atlantic, and the Marina. So take your time, look around, and for the next hour, imagine that you're walking here with me. Welcome to Agadir. It's morning in Agadir, and there is something particularly peaceful about a city early in the day. The streets are alive, but they're not rushing. People are beginning their routines. Cafes are opening. Taxis are moving through the streets. And slowly, Agadir is waking up. One of the first things you may notice about Agadir is that it feels different from many other Moroccan cities. If you've visited Marrakesh or Fez, you may remember narrow streets, old medinas, ancient walls, and a very different kind of architecture. Agadir has another personality. It's more open, more spacious, and in many areas, it feels almost Mediterranean. Perhaps that's because the ocean is never far away. Here, the Atlantic is not just something you visit. It is part of the identity of the city. You can feel its influence everywhere. In the hotels, in the restaurants, in the cafes, and in the thousands of visitors who come here every year. But behind this modern appearance, there is a much deeper story. And to understand Agadir, we have to go back in time. Imagine walking through these streets, but imagine that the city you see around you did not always look like this. On the night of February 29th, 1960, Agadir was struck by a devastating earthquake. In just a few seconds, the city was transformed forever. Thousands of people lost their lives. Buildings collapsed. Families were separated. And an entire city was left facing unimaginable destruction. The old Agadir, the city that existed before the earthquake, was largely gone. And this is one of the most fascinating things about walking through Agadir today. You are walking through a city that was forced to reinvent itself. The city had a choice: to remain a place remembered only for its tragedy, or to rebuild. And Agadir chose to rebuild. The city that emerged was different, more modern, more open, and designed with a new vision for the future. That's why walking through Agadir can sometimes feel unusual. You are looking at a city with a relatively modern appearance, but beneath the streets, there is history. There are memories. There is a city that once stood here, and a new city that rose from its ruins. Perhaps this is why Agadir has such a unique atmosphere. It doesn't feel like a city trapped in the past. It feels like a city that decided to move forward. And maybe that's the real story of Agadir. Not the earthquake itself, but what happened afterward. The decision to begin again. As we continue walking, we are approaching one of the important public spaces in the city.
ساحة الأمال.
The name itself carries a beautiful meaning, Square of Hope. And perhaps there is no better name for a place in a city like Agadir, because hope is really part of the city's story. Today, you can see everyday life happening around you. People walking, locals going about their day, visitors exploring, cafes and restaurants waiting for their customers, and taxis moving through the streets. Nothing here feels dramatic. And that's exactly what makes it interesting. This is normal life, the kind of life that doesn't usually appear in travel advertisements. But when you're walking, these are the moments you remember. A person crossing the street, someone sitting outside a cafe, a taxi stopping for a passenger, a conversation you don't understand, but somehow you still feel part of the scene. This is the Agadir that exists between the famous attractions, the Agadir of everyday life. And if you're planning to visit Morocco, I think this is one of the best ways to experience a city. Don't only look for the famous landmarks. Walk. Slow down. Look at the people. Look at the buildings. Listen to the sounds. Because sometimes, the most interesting part of a city is simply being there. As we continue our walk, the city slowly reveals itself. Agadir is a place where different worlds meet. There are locals who have lived here for years, and visitors who have arrived only yesterday. There are traditional Moroccan influences, and modern hotels, small cafes, and large restaurants, street food, and international cuisine. You can come here looking for a relaxing beach holiday, but you can also discover a city with a fascinating history. And that's one of the reasons I think Agadir deserves more attention. For many people, Morocco means Marrakesh, or perhaps Casablanca, but Agadir offers something completely different. Here, the pace can feel slower. The Atlantic breeze changes the atmosphere, and the city seems to invite you, not to rush, but to stay, to walk a little longer, to sit down for a coffee, to watch people passing by, and perhaps to ask yourself a simple question: what would it be like to live here? Imagine waking up in the morning, walking outside, finding a small cafe, and knowing that the ocean is only a short walk away. For some people, that's exactly the dream. And for others, Agadir becomes a place they return to again and again, because there is something about the combination of sunshine, ocean, and relaxed city life that is difficult to forget. And now, we are getting closer. You may not notice it immediately, but the atmosphere is beginning to change. The city is slowly opening. The streets begin to feel different. And somewhere ahead, beyond the buildings, is the Atlantic Ocean. This is one of my favorite things about walking through a city. You don't simply arrive at a destination. You experience the journey. Every step changes your perspective. The buildings behind you, the streets around you, and the horizon ahead. And then, eventually, you see it. The ocean. The Atlantic. Wide. Powerful. And endless. For a city like Agadir, the ocean is more than a beautiful view. It is part of the city's soul. It brought trade. And today, it brings travelers. People searching for sunshine. People looking for a break from everyday life. People who simply want to walk beside the water and breathe. And here we are, Agadir Beach, one of the places that has made this city famous around the world. The beach stretches along the Atlantic, creating an enormous open space between the city and the sea. This is where Agadir's personality becomes even clearer. The city behind us, the ocean in front of us, and people moving between the two. Some are here for a holiday. Some are here for exercise. Some are simply walking. And some are doing absolutely nothing. And perhaps that's the point. Sometimes the best travel experience is not about doing more. It's about slowing down, standing still, listening to the waves, feeling the wind, watching the people around you, and remembering that you don't have to be anywhere else. You can simply be here, in Agadir. Now we are continuing our walk toward the marina. And this is where another side of Agadir begins to appear. The relaxed beach atmosphere slowly gives way to something more modern. Restaurants, shops, hotels, boats, and visitors from all over the world. This is the Agadir that many tourists come to experience. But what's interesting is that it exists alongside the everyday city we saw earlier. Two different sides of Agadir. One is local. One is international. One feels like everyday life. The other feels like a holiday. And somehow, they work together. And now, we've arrived at the marina, the final part of our journey. Look around. The atmosphere is different here. The boats, the restaurants, the water, the people. Everything feels a little more relaxed, a little more polished. But if you think back to where we started, it's remarkable how much we have seen. We began in the heart of the city. We walked through everyday Agadir. We passed cafes, restaurants, hotels,
locals,
tourists, taxis, and streets filled with ordinary moments. Then we reached the beach, and finally, the marina. And throughout this journey, one thing has remained constant: the presence of the ocean. As you walk here, you might start to understand why Agadir is such a popular destination. You can spend the morning exploring the city, have lunch in a cafe, walk along the beach in the afternoon, and finish the day near the Marina, all without needing to rush. And perhaps that's the real luxury of Agadir: time.
really tasty, don't they?
There is something powerful about the Atlantic Ocean. It reminds you how small we are. You can stand here, look toward the horizon, and realize that the ocean continues far beyond what your eyes can see. For centuries, the Atlantic has connected Morocco with the rest of the world. Ships have crossed it. Fishermen have depended on it. Travelers have arrived because of it. And today, millions of people come to Morocco, and many of them eventually find themselves standing right here, looking at the same ocean. Perhaps that's why walking beside the Atlantic feels timeless. The people change, the buildings change, the city changes, but the ocean remains. And when you think about Agadir's history, that idea becomes even more powerful. The city was destroyed. The city was rebuilt. Generations have come and gone, but the ocean is still here, watching over the city. somewhere in the distance. You may also see the mountain of Agadir Ufella, standing above the city. And from up there, the view of Agadir is completely different. From the mountain, you can look down and see the city spreading toward the Atlantic. But from here, at street level, you experience Agadir differently. You don't simply see the city. You feel it. You hear it. You walk through it. And that's why I believe walking tours are so special. You don't just visit a destination. For a little while, you become part of it. And so, our journey through Agadir is coming to an end. We started in the city center and walked all the way to the Atlantic, from the streets to Sahat al-Amal, from everyday Moroccan life to the beach, and finally to the Marina. But perhaps the most interesting thing about Agadir is not where we ended. It's where the city began again. A city that experienced one of the darkest moments in its history and chose to rebuild. A city that looks toward the future while carrying the memory of the past. A city where the mountains watch from above and the Atlantic stretches endlessly beyond the horizon. And maybe that's why, when you walk through Agadir, there is a feeling that is difficult to explain. It's peaceful. It's open. It's warm. But somewhere beneath that calm, there is a story of a city that disappeared, and then found a way to live again. So if you're watching this from somewhere far away, maybe one day, you'll take this walk yourself. You'll start somewhere in the city. You'll pass through the streets. You'll hear the sounds of Morocco around you. And eventually, you'll reach the ocean. And when you stand there, looking out across the Atlantic, you'll understand something. Agadir isn't just a place you visit. It's a place you experience, one step at a time. Thank you for walking with me. And until the next journey, keep exploring, keep walking, and I'll see you somewhere in the world.